Hey guys, it's M4J here, and welcome back to the Jeffries Network here on OpenTTD. We got a big episode today, a really big episode. It's a time lapse. It's been a long time. I don't think I've done one since September, October, something like that. I can't even remember now. But we're back in time lapse mode, mainly because I wanted to pump out this line as quickly as possible because it's such a big project. So all the other lines, the screen seems to be jumping a little bit. That's not very good. The line out of GSE and everything I built live, and you know, Guard City South and things like that I built live, because they're big builds, but they're small big builds, if that makes sense. So they're all kind of like contained within one space. Particularly the line out of GSE. I took a long time dithering about how many platforms and where I wanted them to go, but once I'd got all that sorted, the actual station and the line was put together relatively quickly. So that wasn't too bad in the end. But today we are third rail pioneers. So we are building the new line out of Guard City St Mark down towards I think it's Runfingley Estrella or Estelle, I think, or Trunfingley Estelle. It's one of those stations. But this line, as I've already said in the past, has been heavily inspired by some of the southern region in England. So lines out of London Bridge, Victoria, Charing Cross, Cannon Street, that kind of thing. Now those last two I haven't really recreated anyway. GST is probably relatively close to being something like a Cannon Street or a Charing Cross in that it's not that big. But this particular main line, it needs a name first and foremost. So I haven't named all the freight sectors yet either, so I've got lots to do there. But if you'd like to name this line, or parts of this line, I'll explain more about that in a minute, head over to the naming suggestions. I think, because I can't remember the names of the stations on the line at this moment in time, if you just say new third rail line for now, and then I'll change it in the future to whatever the station names are, just so that we all know what we're talking about, that kind of thing. Yeah, this line is taken inspiration from a lot of the southern region, and part of the southern region, particularly in the London area, there are loads of branch lines that sort of branch off the line, come back onto the line, things like that. The Catford Loop is one that springs to mind, the Chatham Main Line, the Brighton Main Line. They all have branches that spur off, come back, go to other places, all sorts of different things. And that's something that I wanted to recreate with this line. Something else I wanted to recreate with this line, partly due to laziness, but also to follow the line that I had originally planned. When I first loaded up the game, I was tempted to change the route of this line, because I looked at the line on the map view and thought, is this really where I want this line to go? And then I sort of had another think about it, and then decided, yeah, it probably is actually. There's nowhere else really for it to go. But the result of that is there are lots of straight lines. There are lots of sections on this track where the line is almost perfectly straight. Which, as I say, is partly due to laziness. It's partly due to me wanting an easier life when it comes to building the line. You know, if it's 2 tracks, I'll be wiggling it all over the place. But 4 tracks is a bit much at times. But also, just to follow the route that I originally set up, it does deviate at some places because I decide that some towns are worth serving and others perhaps not. There is a huge station roughly halfway, I think, or maybe 2/3 of the way along the line. Anyone who lives in Germany or has been to Germany, you will recognise the station. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But yeah, I'm really happy with how this line's turned out, actually. I like the idea of the little branches and all of that. It might get very busy, but that's kind of the point of this main line, is to run trains on. I've also decided what type of train I'm going to be running along this line. People in the past have said about running different varieties of trains and things like that. This is an old school line. We're going to be running very old school. So some of the express services are going to be served by Class 460s, which are the Junipers, formerly used by Gatwick Express. And also, we're going to be using the Gatwick Express trains that were Class not 80s, 72s, I think. The proper old school Gatwick Express and the Intercity livery. We're going to be running those. Probably as semi-fast services, to be honest. Their top speed's only 90 miles an hour, so we might have to look into that. And besides that, the local trains, we're going to be running oh, hang on, I need to remind myself what these trains are called. These are proper old school that I plan on running here though. Let's see, I've got the game open on my other screen. Class 423s, otherwise known as the VOPs. This one here, the class 4, that's another 423. 422? No, not 422. 421 though, we're going to be running. 432s? No. Just another 423. You guys can't see what I'm doing right now, so you're probably wondering what the hell I'm talking about, but there you go. The 455s. 456s, yep. Which are networkers, I believe. Oh, it's the 480s, sorry, the Junipers. The 460s are just Gatwick Express trains. Yeah. But we're going to be running lots of old style trains in Konnex livery. 73s is the Gatwick Express set. There you go, 73s. Yes, so we're going to be running lots of old style trains in Konnex livery. I don't like the Konnex livery. That's something that I will say. I've said it before actually, but I will definitely say it again. I do not like the Konnex livery. It looks like it used to all be yellow and the trains faded in the sun or something. I don't know. It doesn't sit well with me. I just don't like the colours. But they are a part of British railway heritage, so I will use them. And that doesn't mean I don't like this route either. As I say, I do like this route. I'm not cursing the route with a rubbish livery or anything. It's just being realistic, being old school. Something else I would like to do is not have the same type of train run on the same service all the time. So at the moment I've got things like 319s run from Bartholomew up to Neffingberg, and only 319s run that service. The same with all the routes out of GSG. They're all run by pretty much the same type of train, but it's always the same train on the same timetable. Whereas here, I'm going to shake things up a little bit. So we might have a 455 running the route, as well as a 423 kind of thing. We will have to work with the speed limits, which is why I haven't done it in the past. But I think if we make the top speed 75, which is the top speed of all those, the really old trains, then we should be able to do it. And we should be able to do it without a problem, which is good. But yeah, let's go on to the conversation topics for today's episode. Let me remind myself of some of the conversation topics for today's episode, because it's been well over a week since I last recorded an episode. Anyone who watches, anyone who follows me on social media, you will have seen that I had a PC problem over the weekend. I'm actually recording this on Monday morning. No, Monday afternoon. Monday afternoon. Where did I get morning from? I don't know. Monday afternoon. So if this episode's late, then you'll know why. Because it takes forever to render at the moment. But yeah, I switched my PC off to do maintenance and stuff, and then switched it back on, and it overheated. Well, it didn't even overheat. Like, it wasn't even on long enough to overheat. It just stopped turning on. Like, it was booting up, and then it just turned off, like a power cut kind of thing. So straight away I was thinking things like, oh god, there goes the CPU, or there goes the power supply, both of which are very expensive to replace, because it's always them that break first. So I opened her up, sprayed her with some compressed air, and seems to be working again. So I'll keep an eye on that just in case. But we seem to be working again, so that's good news. But yeah, let's talk about today's episode. So, constructing the new main line from GSMA, connecting Cadenbury Junction to the new line. We have done that. I can't remember if that's actually happened on screen yet or not, but I have done that. I've connected it both sides. You'll see the second connection at the end of this episode. In fact, this is the big station that I'm building now. So I build the tracks first, and then I come back and actually build the platforms. So you'll see that happen a little bit later on. And then build spur line at Mondham to connect to Great Central Line, which I haven't done yet. But there's a bit where we cross underneath the line that we built ages ago from Drentbourne Retire. Is it Retire? Retire? I can't remember. But there's a line that runs through Denston and then off down towards Mumfingford. In fact, does it connect to Mumfingford? Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Well, technically it connects up at Bumpbourne, but yeah. So we've done all those things, so that's good. I can actually tick all those off. So I've got put down here for conversation topics: finish the BR argument, discuss rail news, and discuss future rail projects. So let's finish the BR argument by pretty much saying the UK rail industry is a farce, just as much now as it was during the times of BR. And that's kind of linking into discussing current rail news as well. I don't know if anyone else was aware of this, but Virgin East Coast are losing the franchise at the end of next year. So end of 2019, which is 3 years early. Apparently they've not been running the franchise properly. But here's where it's stupid for me. There might be other factors involved. Some might not have been publicised, but the main reason that the Transport Minister has given for Virgin losing the franchise, Virgin and Stagecoach, I should say, there's both of them, is Virgin haven't delivered on the promise to get the new trains in and the new infrastructure that they promised. However, that's not the responsibility of Virgin. Virgin, as part of their franchise bid, said we will bring in the new Class 800 trains, which is fine. That's the reason they won the bid, is because they made that promise, along with some other things. But it's Network Rail's job to actually upgrade the line and upgrade the power supplies to be able to support the trains, and they've been delayed in doing that. So Virgin can't run the trains because they physically cannot run the trains. But the Transport Secretary has decided that they're no longer viable for running the franchise because they haven't delivered on their franchise commitments, which is really, really weird. It's kind of like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good analogy, but there isn't one really, because it's all just ridiculous. So that's happening. So as I say, the UK rail industry is as much of a farce now, and it's not Network Rail, and it's not Virgin or anything like that. The franchise holders tend to do pretty good these days. It's things like the Department for Transport, who just don't seem to have a logical understanding of why things are working out the way they are. They're the ones who have been criticised in the past for botching the franchise bid when Virgin re-tendered for the West Coast, and it was originally awarded to First Group, and then Virgin appealed, and I think they took it pretty much as high as it could go, and eventually it was overturned, and then the DFT went, oh yeah, we have messed up here. The franchise tendering process isn't that good after all, and then they just gave it back to Virgin. In fact, I don't even think they gave it back to Virgin, they just extended the original deal that Virgin had. Which again is weird. Just re-award it to them, don't just extend the one you've already got, because then what's the point of holding the process in the first place? So that's the thing. Transport for the North unveils strategic rail plan. That's another headline. I'm reading from my magazine here. This is in no way my own stuff. Mostly they're talking about connecting up to High Speed 2 at different places, as well as increasing capacity through Manchester. The 2 new platforms at Manchester Piccadilly are part of that, so they can run more services between the northeast and the northwest of England through Manchester. They're also looking at, again, it's more High Speed 2 connections, both in the northwest and the northeast. So that's all happening. The fact that they're committing to that sort of thing means that High Speed 2 is pretty much going to happen now. However, again, those of you in the know, there's a company called Karelian, who are contractors. They're the UK's largest construction and infrastructure management firm, or one of the largest in the UK. So they were doing a lot of projects like the electrification projects that have been going on at the moment. They've also been helping rebuild stations and bridges and things like that. They went bust over Christmas, like they collapsed completely. So Network Rail have had to move in to protect the jobs that Karelian were working on. And what's bad about that is Karelian were one of the main companies awarded contracts for High Speed 2. So now they're going to have to redo the process of finding a replacement, which is bad. It's really bad. But yeah, that happened. Something else, it's nothing to do with what you're seeing on screen right now, but the world's steepest funicular railway has opened in Switzerland, and I'm looking at pictures of it, and it just looks like when I used to put model railway down the stairs. That's exactly what it looks like. It's so steep. It's 110% incline, which is more than 1 foot by 1 foot. Well, 1 foot along by 1 foot up. It's more than that. It's almost like, well, it's 1 foot 1.2 inches, I think, which means nothing. It's 110 centimeters up for every 100 centimeters along, essentially. So that's quite steep. And they've got a really innovative train design as well, so that passengers remain level at all times. Kind of like how the gondolas work on the London Eye, in that they're actually built within rings and they rotate so that they always remain level. I think that's really clever. It's so simple, but so clever as well. Any other news? Thameslink. Thameslink's always in the news. The franchise is not delivering value for money. That's no surprise. To be honest, I mean, the whole thing being one franchise is the reason why it's not working. And I was looking at this the other day. Because I was reading about things like London Midland, which is now North West Trains, I think it is, or something like that. I can't remember the name. London Midlands something, I think, is one of them. I need to look that up. I will look that up in just a second. But they've got a really good punctuality rate, sort of. They're probably the least punctual of the punctual services. But then I looked at things like C2C, which run out of Fenchurch Street up towards Southend and Tilbury and things like that. They've got the best punctuality. I think it's like 89.3%, or maybe even in the 90s. And then I looked at that and thought, yeah, because they're the only franchise that runs trains on that line. Literally no other franchise, no other company runs trains into Fenchurch Street. It is only C2C. And then I also looked at things like Chiltern. I forgot the name then. Chiltern, out of Marylebone. And again, they have a really good punctuality rate. And I think, yeah, because as far as like Banbury and Oxford, they are the only franchise that runs services on the line. There might be the odd freight train every now and then, and sometimes there'll be a special working, but that's not enough to stop the entire franchise from running properly. But then you look at ones like Thameslink, for example, north of London, going out towards Luton and Bedford. If they're on the fast lines, they're sharing with Midlands, East Midlands, sorry. So if they're running late, then Thameslink runs late, and vice versa. And then south of England, so from Blackfriars right the way down to places like Brighton and Horsham and the Sutton Loop, they're sharing tracks with Southeastern, Southern, Great Western, Southwest Trains. So that's 5 different franchises. I know that Thameslink and Southern are technically the same franchise, but they're run as separate companies still. So that's 5 different franchises all running on the same tracks. If one train is delayed, that's 4 other companies who then have to go out to their passengers and say, sorry, but there's a train block in the line we can't get past. I think people overlook that sometimes. Thameslink is bad. I'm not standing up for them at all. It's bad. They're running things really, really badly. The new trains are delayed. The trains are cancelled. The driver-only operation argument for Southern rages on. But it's probably not helped by ignorance, shall we say, in that sometimes it is factors beyond their control. A bit like the Virgin scenario. People are probably going to complain about Virgin. People do complain about Virgin and say, the trains are rubbish, they're always breaking down. Yes, because the new ones should have been introduced in the very near future, and now it's looking more and more likely that that won't be the case because Network Rail haven't delivered on the upgrades in time, which is really frustrating because companies are being blamed for things that are out of their control. And I'm sure if in the real world someone gets blamed for something that's not their fault, they will feel like they've been unjustly accused. Whereas in the rail industry, it just seems to be the norm. You just blame whoever's like the first person you see, whether they're actually responsible or not. Who knows? So that does annoy me a little bit, just a little bit, but we'll get by. Other rail news. Let's get on with other rail news. But actually, before we do, this does back up my claim really that BR was bad, but have we learned? Not really. Does that mean we should renationalise? Absolutely not. Because the level of investment, Virgin have invested 200 million into the East Coast, which they will never get back because of this. It's been called a bailout, but as someone pointed out in my rail magazine, the government aren't actually putting any of their own money in to get Virgin out first. They're starting a new partnership scheme which could involve Virgin. So it'll be like co-run between the DFT and whoever comes in as the franchise holder, which, as I say, could well be Virgin still, which would be a real climb down. Like, they're taking the franchise off them, but then they're letting them run the route still. I just don't understand it. But Virgin have invested £200 million, which they will never see again. If it was nationalised and it was all run under, let's say, Network Rail, you would never get that investment. Absolutely not. You would never ever get that investment. 200 million on new trains is just, you know, that is a privatised thing only. If it was up to the government, we'd still have the 91s and the 125s running on that route and breaking down constantly and causing delays and all things like that, which is not good. Anyway, yes, you can see on the screen now I'm building the new massive interchange station. This is where two main lines meet. Now, I've kind of made it difficult to signal, to be honest, because the way I've done it is the two fast lines will be in the centre for each main line, and then the two slow lines will be on the outside. But that does mean that if you're going from GSMA down to the new terminus station down in the southeast, you do have to cross over a lot of lines to get into this station. So I will be building additional, like, bridges and flyovers and dive unders and things for the slow lines only. Fast lines it's not really necessary, because swapping over a couple of lines isn't that bad at all. All trains will be stopping at this station, which is why every line has a platform. It is a major interchange station built between two big towns, so that's why I've decided to do that. Let's finish by talking about other rail news, shall we? I can't actually remember how long this time lapse is, so I'm going to have to keep a very close eye on the screen as well whilst I'm doing this. There is well, there already was a company, but there's a real impetus at the moment to build a southern rail link for Heathrow Airport as part of the third runway expansion. So currently, the only way of accessing Heathrow by rail is from the Great Western Main Line to the north, Airport Junction, which is just after Hayes and Harlington, I believe. It then goes into tunnels and runs into all of the terminals. It's an airport, it's not a railway. So Terminal 4, Heathrow Central, and I think Terminal 5 has its own station as well, although that might just be on the underground, I can't remember. But there are plans to build a southern link that links to the line between Guildford and Reading. I think it's Guildford. Yeah, between Guildford and Reading. And then they'll have third rail trains that operate between Waterloo and Heathrow via Clapham Junction, Putney, Hounslow, Twickenham, Richmond and Staines, according to this. Now, originally that was thrown out because of the number of level crossings on that particular line. I think it is Staines Station has a level crossing at either end of the platforms. And if you imagine the additional traffic with an airport express line, like Crossrail runs to Heathrow, and that'll be I think it's 12 trains an hour, so a train every 5 minutes. Can you imagine if that level crossing had to close every 5 minutes? That would be impossible. I actually saw a video quite recently, the level crossing in Japan, where every morning the level crossing shuts for about 40 minutes whilst all the commuter trains come past. That's a long time to be sat at a level crossing. I'm not really sure why they haven't just replaced it with a bridge or a tunnel by now. I think there is like a bridge like 2 yards down the road as well, which is weird. I guess they just keep it because it's such a like an iconic thing, a level crossing that shuts for 40 minutes every day. That's quite something. But yeah, the southern link to Heathrow, I'm for it. You know, I don't see why not, if it means you can get better connections to Heathrow, because currently you do have to go to Paddington to get to Heathrow, which for me, where I live, isn't easy. Once Crossrail's open, it'll be a lot easier, especially once the Thameslink services are operating as well, because I can just get a train to Farringdon and get Crossrail to Heathrow. That'll be perfect. But people in the south of London, that's not the case. Like, if you live in Clapham, let's say, or if you live near Battersea or somewhere like that, you can't just hop on Crossrail or Thameslink because it doesn't run through either of those areas. You do have to sort of navigate your way through London on the tube and things like that to get to Paddington. So a southern link from Waterloo would be very, very handy. And in fact, I might have already built it. This spur line that I'm building here does go past one of the airports that's currently only served by Guard City Overground and the HLR, because I figured why not add a third connection. And this is the one that goes down to Cadingbury as well from the south side. Sorry, from the west side. Technically it goes from the south side as well, but from the west side, and it connects up with the 2-track line there to form the 4-track line into Cadingbury. I'm quite happy with that. I think that's quite a clever connection. What other rail news? Ashford International. I didn't know that the new Eurostar trains are actually bigger than the old ones. I knew they were longer, but I didn't know they were bigger. They've actually been built to European loading gauge. So they're Siemens Velaro trains, which is the same as the Ice 4s, I think, in Germany. The Ice 3s or the Ice 4s. I think it's the 4s. And they are wider and they are taller. And yet whenever I look at pictures of them, they always look shorter and skinnier. Which is, I suppose it's perception. It's all about perception. But Ashford has to be rebuilt now. The platforms have to be altered and new signalling systems installed so that the new E320s can actually operate into Ashford. Which again, I didn't know that they couldn't at the moment. I think that's actually one of the reasons why some of the old trains have been kept on, so they can still run through Ashford, although that won't be the case by the end of this month, I think, is when they're finishing it. Oh, April. April is when they'll be able to access. So that'll be more 373s off to the scrapyard, which is a shame. I think they're keeping 10. I think that's what they said. So they're going to have, I think it's 17 new trains and 10 old trains. I think that's the ratio. I might be wrong. More interesting news. This is interesting for me. It's probably not for you. Now, all the high-speed lines that I've built on this network are either 2 or 4-track. 4-track going into stations and out of stations, 2-track everywhere else. South Korea have just opened a new line, 120-kilometer line. Cost 2.6 billion. So what's that? 120 is about... Let's see. I'm trying to do 12 divided by 8. My brain's not switched on yet. That's 2.5, isn't it? 1.5. 1.5. Yes, 1.5. So it's 1.5 times 5, which is 7.5. So it's about 75 miles, which is high speed 1 actually. I think it's about 75 miles as well, and it costs only 2.6 billion pounds. I think we're getting ripped off in this country. Anyway, it's been built for 250 km/h running, which is fast. That is like mainland Europe fast. But what's interesting is it's single track majority of the way. It's been built to connect to the Winter Olympics site, which is always cool. I like things like that because you do get massive rail infrastructure built, which is really awesome. But it's single track. I've never seen a high-speed rail line be single track before. And the trains they're running look like the old school TGVs as well, which is also really cool. But anyway, I am going to have to end this episode because we've run out of footage, unfortunately. I won't leave you with a black screen. I'll alter the time-lapse slightly so that it fills the time. So next episode we are going to be probably putting some extra trains out on this line. So off camera I'll be doing all the signalling work, making sure that's all programmed up correctly, which I did start doing last night, but it was 3 AM when I finished recording the time-lapse. So that didn't go very well. But then I'll start running some services on the line as well. So when we come back on Friday, I'll introduce you to some of the services, and then I'll also show you what the ones we're going to be putting in that particular episode will be. But until then, guys, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and of course if you're enjoying the series, drop some comments down below with ideas for future episodes, and also go check out the naming suggestions and leave some ideas there as well. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you have already subscribed to the channel, thank you guys for your continued support, and until next time, I will see you soon.